Hi, welcome back to Fast Forward Live. And with me today is Neil Clarke, the editor and publisher of Clarkesworld magazine, forever, a whole lot of anthologies, and he's won a whole lot of awards. And we're thrilled to have him back with us. Welcome, Neil.
Hi, thanks for having me.
Yeah. The last time we talked to you was 9 years ago, and there's been a lot going on since then. Clark's World is still running strong, still getting nominated for things, and very exciting.
hmm
So, how are you doing?
I'm doing well. It's been an interesting journey, but you know I'm happy with the direction things are moving, and you know I'm enjoying myself.
That's good. That's good because you started Clark's World like 16 years ago, I think.
16 years ago this week.
Yeah, wow, that's amazing. And one thing I want to talk to you about is the process of putting out a monthly magazine.
hmm
Um, how far ahead do you need to decide what stories you're going to put in? I mean, how many submissions do you get to have to go through to figure this out?
We get about 1,100 submissions a month,
Wow.
and we try to respond to all of those within a day or two. So it's a you don't always succeed. Like this week, dealing with my son going off on a vacation. I took some time off to help him with that, but I caught up this morning, so we're back on track. But as far as how far in advance, the stories you see in the next issue may have been bought anywhere from earlier this month to 3 months ago. It's really a matter of sometimes lining up stories the right length to go together. For example, we have a few novellas in inventory, and that takes up a chunk of the word count for an issue. So we'll pair it up with some shorter stories. So when we have longer or shorter stories come into inventory, they might sit around a little bit longer than the mid-length ones.
Mm. So, what is the word count for an issue of Clark's World?
45,000 words of fiction
Wow.
plus the
Plus, you have
nonfiction.
plus the nonfiction. So, when you decide which stories you're going to go into the issue you're working on now, what goes into that decision? I mean, you said the length, so you try to
hmm
figure out how much of fiction you're going to get for that 45,000. But do you look at a theme for an issue? How do you make those decisions?
Well, we don't do themes. It's more about having stories that play well with one another. You don't want to give your readers whiplash, flying them all over the place. But we also don't want stories that are too similar either. So, every now and then there's people that think there's a theme. And that I always find that a little amusing because there isn't really a conscious theme in the issues, but that act of getting stories that play together, you might be able to draw a theme if if they're close enough.
Yeah, yeah. And you have a staff that helps you with this. You've got slush readers, and it's like, yeah. Tell me about the staff that works with you.
Okay, well, we'll start with the slush readers. There's usually 4 or 5 of them. Right now, there's two, and uh, they will first read maybe 30% of the stories. And what that involves is they read through the story and then they write up some notes and make a recommendation as to whether or not I should consider it. Those are the stories that are passed up to me, or they suggest that I pass on the story and they tell me why. I read those notes. No letters go out without me checking a box. So if there's something about their notes that feels a little bit off or nitpicky, I might read the story anyway. And during their training period, I read everything they read. So to sort of be able to point them in the right direction if they're being too critical or not critical enough. Usually, it's the not critical enough. Um, uh, so that's their primary responsibility. Then there's Sean who works with me on the Sean Wallace who works with me
Yeah.
on the fiction, and the two of us will read the remaining slush. and we'll talk about the ones that are passed up before I send out any contracts. Uh, then Kate Baker is our nonfiction editor and handles our podcast. So all
Yep.
the stories that we publish over the month, she records and produces episodes, and then sends them to me for upload and distribution.
Yep. And we've had Kate on the show, and she
Hmm.
talked about doing this.
Hmm. And so Kate also works with Arlie, who's our interviewer. I picked the people who are going to be interviewed, but Kate's the edit. Kate edits those pieces. There's a reason why Kate does all the narration. If you haven't noticed.
Wow, that's a and then the layout, knowing which order the stories are going to be in, and how the online is going to look, because you do it
Hmm.
in PDF. It goes out for EPUB and all the different ebook
Yes,
formats. So who does the layout of all that?
that's me.
That's you.
Yeah, it's fun. I do the online layout and the web design. Then the ebook, and from the ebook we go to the print and PDF editions. And Amazon, for their subscription program, wants a certain format, and Barnes and Noble wants a certain format. So we produce several different editions to make a single issue. The entire last couple of days of the month are me doing design and production and distribution.
Yeah, I was going to ask about that, because when we were setting up this interview, you said, "Well, I can't do it the last week of the month
Hmm.
ever,"
Yeah.
and I was curious as to what goes on in that last week.
It's all the notes from the proofreader come back. So anything that I need to discuss with the authors is settled out there. We then shift into production mode. Well, I shift into production mode since and I'll build each one of those formats in the order I mentioned. Um, with the goal of being done before dinner on the night before. Now, sometimes there's a convention or something at the end of the month, and that just pushes our schedule back and causes major headaches. So that'll happen a few times in the next few months.
Yeah, yeah. But you do the layout stuff because you
Hmm.
came out of that business. That was kind of like your day job for a
Well,
while. Was in IT and all that.
yes, I worked in education in technology, so I did a lot of I did for a while. I did some online course design. I did instructional design. I was in charge of all IT at one point. So I sort of hopped around a lot and have always been um, making various systems. And going further back, I wrote bulletin board system software, pre-internet,
Ah,
dial-up systems.
yeah,
So I knew interface design, things like that. So and when the internet started coming up in academia, we had one of the early browsers. We had and set up had to create the first website for the university, things like that. So I sort of came through all of that. I was a bookseller for a while, an
yeah,
online bookseller, and which is how I ended up in publishing at all, was through that book selling experience. And of course, the moment I started publishing, the bookstore closed within a year.
yes. Now, um, you gave up this day job of yours
Hmm.
after you had a very serious heart attack almost exactly 10 years ago. I
Hmm.
think you were posting online that it,
Yeah.
like Tuesday or something, it was exactly 10 years. Yeah, I
Yes.
remember when that was happening. And that kind of drove you to give up the day job. It also drove one of your anthologies.
Yes. Well, the heart attack happened at ReaderCon, which is where the ReaderCon is a dangerous place for me, apparently, because that's where the magazine was launched. I got talked into publishing at ReaderCon, and then I nearly died 6 years later at the same place. Um, but while I was recovering from that, and this is fairly common among people who've had a a a brush with death, because there were moments there where we weren't sure I was going to make it, and you come out realizing what's important to you. You sort of get rid of the things that just that are taking up your time, or drawing you away from the things you enjoy. And I realized that the job I had had in academia, which is a career I loved, I had fallen out of love with it in the prior few years, just due to the way the industry had changed. And I was fortunate enough that I had been publishing the magazine for 6 years, and I realized, here I am sitting in my hospital bed working on a magazine. I've nearly died. Why am I doing this? And it was calming me down. It was because it was what I
Huh.
enjoyed. And it was, the nurses didn't try and stop me because the monitors are saying everything's fine. And it was just something that brought me joy, and I decided at that point that you know maybe I should be a little bit more serious about going down this route, as a career, as opposed to sort of a side job. So I developed a plan to make my way out of that industry, and um, it because of the heart attack, I got fired, by my current employer, and I went
Okay.
to work for somebody else who was far more understanding of the fact that I needed to go to cardiac rehab and be out of work for legitimate reasons. But they also knew that I wanted to, that this was going to be my last job in tech, and these were people I had known for years, and they were great to work with, and it was sad to leave them, but I think it was the right move for me. It freed me up, to have the time I needed to take on some of the anthology projects, and right around that time is when the year's best fell in my lap. So I needed time, or I would have gone insane trying to do a full-time job, a magazine, and do anthologies.
Hmm. Yeah. So, but you also, we talked about getting the fiction in.
Hmm.
There's also nonfiction in the
Hmm.
magazine, including like in what I think of as your editorial.
Oh, the pain of my existence. Yeah.
Yes. But you also have, you mentioned the interviews and you have other nonfiction
Hmm.
articles and essays in there. Do you assign those to people, or does this come in as slush as well?
Okay, so the interviews are assigned. I'll look through, new releases, or people who are up for awards, or people who that might have worked with the magazine at one time that are doing something cool, and I will, give Arlie some names, and he'll go off and contact them. Um, the rest of the nonfiction, the articles, those are Kate, receives pitches for those, and she'll
Uh,
have them, write the article. Sometimes she'll ask me about an article, but I try to let her. I try to be hands off. I don't want to micromanage that. Um, the editorial I write, and then I give to Sean and Kate to edit, because no one should ever not be edited in a publication. So, and they usually have some very constructive things to say. I am a very slow writer. I do not write fiction. I write my editorials. I write the introductions to my anthologies, but it is a painful process for me. I'm
I
fine
was,
helping other people write, but my own writing, I can't turn my inner editor off, and I end up going into a death spiral.
yeah, yeah. I was wondering if you ever had any desires to write fiction yourself.
Yeah, every now and then I think I could, and then I try to write my editorial, and that fixes it. Mhm.
Kind of drives that away.
Yeah, that is the one benefit of the editorial. It keeps me from going down that route.
Getting sucked into that whole writerly thing. Um, do you, when you're putting in the magazine, is it kind of a 9 to 5 thing? Do you have a regular schedule you keep to, or is it madness?
Have you ever run your own business?
No,
Okay, there's no
never mind.
hours.
Never mind.
Um,
Hang on, let me mark that off of my questions here. Let me mark that as stupid question.
no, it and like I said, I handle so many of the I'm on all the time. Before I go to bed, I check things. There's you know I play an online game with Sean every night, and if there's stuff going on with the magazine, we talk about it while we're playing the game.
Please.
So there's uh, it's every day, even when I'm on vacation, I will still look in and make sure. Like I said, the submissions are coming in all the time too, so we never close. Um, so it's something I feel compelled to keep up with, but I enjoy it, so it doesn't bother me.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. Now, is there a particular place you like to sit while you're working on the magazine? Right
Right
there.
here.
This is it.
Well,
You
that's
see, this
where
is
it
where
is.
he works, people.
This is where it is this month. It was over on the other side of the room before Christmas. When the tree got set up, it moved me. Um, and next week I'll be working from another location. We at some other house, uh, and it's wherever my laptop is tends to be my office.
Yeah, yeah. That makes some sense because the laptop, I would assume, kind of is your office.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, we do very little is done on paper
Yeah,
here. So, aside from little scribbled notes I have about, what the page numbers are for linking up in an index, it's just quicker to write it down than it is to type it up.
hmm. Now, the other thing you do on the magazine is that you've also been nominated, I believe, won awards for is art director.
Hmm.
You've won Chesley's.
Yes, I've won three and been nominated for a couple, I think two others. I can't remember at the moment. But yeah, it's the strangest thing to me because I I'm only picking like 12 pieces of art for a year. So I don't really think of myself as in the league of some of the people that I've been on the ballot with. So it's a great honor to have won it, and I'm very flattered. And it's one of the things I enjoy a lot about working on the magazine working with the artists. We're doing a lot of like the cover art is not tied to a story. I
Right.
consider the cover art to be another story. So when I'm looking for things, I tend to look at something that just speaks to me. Uh, in that way, I'm sort of evaluating a visual story rather than words like everything else. And so I can spend hours just browsing through artist portfolios or on ArtStation, just looking at images. And if I
Hmm.
find one I like, then I try and get it.
So you find the art by just going around to artists, I guess, websites
Yes,
and
some of them
different
send
online
me.
places.
Yeah, some of them send me their portfolio links. I have a long list of bookmarked portfolio links that I'll go through every couple of months, or if I'm on a buying session, because sometimes I can't read anymore, so I'll go and look at the art.
Hmm. And then you just pick the art you like and say
Hmm.
that could be the cover of this issue.
Yeah, assuming the artist is okay with it. Yeah,
Well,
and
yeah,
they
and
do
then
get
you pay
paid.
them.
So
Yeah, let's make that very clear.
yes, yes, everybody
You
is
pay the
paid.
writers, you pay the artists.
Hmm.
This is a good thing.
Yes, it's the way it should be.
Yeah, yeah. Because the art you have on the magazine is fantastic. We have an online question. Um, I can go ahead and read it.
Sure.
Somebody's asking, has the proliferation of online science fiction periodicals changed anything about your approach to publishing Clarkesworld? Is it harder or easier to get readers now that there are so many online outlets? Good question. Thank
Um,
you.
it. I don't think we've changed anything in response to anyone else. One, but I do know that the number of markets does make it harder for all of us. to get enough paying readers, and there's simply just not enough paying readers to sustain all of it for everybody. This is why a lot of markets don't pay their editors or pay them very little, be, simply because there isn't enough money within the short fiction community. There's more than enough readers, so if everybody who was reading short fiction even paid $1, even after the horrendous credit card fees, it would still be a huge boost to the community. Most people aren't getting. I think it's typically below 7% is the supporting rate for readership, and that's difficult. But we're not alone in this. The same problem exists for people like PBS. Anything that is putting content out there for free. There's not much money in advertising, so it is all driven by subscriptions. So that, yeah, it makes it a little harder there. Getting new readers. I think everybody's trying to figure out how to get new readers in. I think it follows the quality, and you hope for what you're doing connects with the audience, and if it does, they stick around. Everybody's got a little bit of a different flavor, and I think that's a good thing. There's something for everybody out there right now.
Yeah, yeah. Speaking of supporting the magazine, you have a
Hmm.
Patreon, and
Yes.
you also have what I love, the Clarkesworld Citizens.
Hmm.
And there's different levels of citizenship.
Yes. Yeah, that actually was inspired by my work in academia with fundraising and PBS, because you get different levels of citizen. And we thought it'd be kind of funny, we're Clarkesworld. We figured it'd be fun to say, okay, well, the people who support us, you're citizens. And then we thought, okay, well, if they gave us more, would they get a title? And so we went up to Burgermeister, then royalty, and we jokingly at the start put in Overlord. All right. And
Yes.
and it turned out that a lot of people want to be overlords. Who would have guessed? So we figured, okay, well, we obviously didn't put a high enough we put deity over overlord. Um, and occasionally we'll get somebody at that level, and that's always like, what? But there's some people out there who have the means and feel that supporting the arts is something they like to do. So God bless them. But the one of the things we do is we make sure that we're in lots of different ecosystems, because you have to diversify where your income is coming from, particularly as a short fiction magazine, because the money is so split apart. And if you say, "Oh, I'm not going to sell at Amazon," you're giving up a large audience of people who would pay you only there. And then you've got, well, Patreon. There's some people who only do it there. There's some people who will not do it at any of those. So you need an option for those people, which is where the Clarkesworld Citizens one came in. And so we're in as many different markets as we can. We believe in going to the readers rather than making them come to whatever system we want to use. Um, and I think that is one of the healthier ways to operate, because we're sort of insulated against any one of those vendors doing something terrible. Like if Amazon decided they wanted to change their rates, and charge us an extra 10%, and they never have, thank God. But the if they did, it would eat up a significant chunk of money. But since our readership is spread out across a bunch of different places, it wouldn't be as bad. Whereas if some of the markets that are more heavily reliant on them could be taken out by
Yeah.
something like this. And a few years ago, Patreon almost did that when they drove off a lot of people using it by a silly policy move that they eventually went back and
Yeah.
got rid of.
Now, Clarkesworld isn't the only magazine you do,
No.
because you also do Forever, which is,
Hmm.
I think, a really nice idea. It's a reprint magazine.
Hmm.
So how do you figure out? Because I've noticed on your website you have places for people to suggest things
Yes.
for the reprint. I think also to suggest things for the year's best. And also, I think you get people can submit stories
Hmm.
through the website. And I think that's really clever. So, how do you figure out what's going into forever?
uh, I have a very large spreadsheet. And if there's a story I like, I throw it in there. And I've been doing that for a while. And it's also, like I said, some of it comes from recommendations. Some of it just turns up during the reading for because I've been doing. I'm working on I think volume 7 of best science fiction of the year, and reading for volume 8 at the same time. So there's a lot of I'm reading all the science fiction stories that I can get my hands on. So I've got 8 years of data from that too. Um, so it's just stuff that I enjoyed that might not have been right for Clarkesworld. Might or maybe I wanted it, but I couldn't get it. It's like one of those chances to print a story, to publish the story that I really liked, and it's nice to be able to feature things like that. And Forever was originally started right before I got offered the Best Science Fiction of the Year series. So it was going to be my only outlet for that. And then the two sort of paired up rather nicely.
So, how old does a story have to be able to go into forever?
It just has to have been published, and the
Published
rights are,
before? It was
as long
just
as
a
the author has the
merely a
rights
reprint.
back. Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah, that's the criteria. Generally, I won't go too far back though. I try to keep it within the last 20 years. Um,
Hmm.
I'll make exceptions here and there, but it makes it easier to uh, less things to worry about. Let's just put it that way.
And you're still doing anthologies from your publishing house
Yes, occasionally.
occasionally, yeah. So that's even more things you need to read and more
Yes.
stuff you need to do.
Well, the I I've the so I Worm Publishing, the company you're talking
Yeah,
about, the anthology I did with them first was right after the heart attack, and I did it myself because I it was a personal project. It was upgraded. I had just been implanted with a
upgraded.
defibrillator, therefore I was a cyborg and wanted to do a cyborg anthology. I didn't want anybody else telling me that I could or couldn't do certain things. So I did. It was my first anthology as well, and a learning experience. uh, but then just in the last week, the latest one came out, and it's new voices in Chinese science fiction. It's a side
Yeah,
project I did with Xia and Regina Kanyuwang, about authors that hadn't been translated into English yet. That's what we meant by new to American audiences. Some of these authors might have been around for more than a few years, but that one's finally out, and it's the first anthology I've done through Worm since then, aside from all the Clarkesworld anthologies we do.
wow. So how many anthologies have you edited so far? Not counting
I
the year's best,
oh
roughly.
I oh, I don't know, maybe 10,
Hmm.
not counting the year's best.
Yeah,
Um, yeah, I'm usually focused more on what's coming next than what I've done, because the magazine sort of forces that on me.
yeah, yeah, yeah. That's amazing. We're almost out of time.
Mhm,
One thing I'm curious about, though, I want to get to before we finish, is the people you get that send you stories.
mhm.
Um, who are the people? Has the makeup of the writers that you publish and that send you stories, has that changed over the 16 years?
Oh yeah, yeah. Well, aside from the numbers increasing, I mean, when we started, I think it was only like 300 a month. Um, uh, now around 1100, we're seeing stories from much wider part of the world. And that is one of the things, like I have posted several times statistics from our slush pile, and there are a lot of them on my blog. And one of the things I track is where the submissions are coming from. So different countries that are represented, and we've done a lot more international work. It's one of the things I've been actively pursuing, translation and international audience, because the way I look at it is Clarkesworld is a primarily digital publication, therefore it is not real. It shouldn't be considered just an American magazine. We have people all over the world reading it, a significant number of people reading it, and it's better if we can pull everybody in. Besides, there's a lot of interesting stuff written outside our borders or outside our language, that is part of this community as well, and uh, I think it gives I think it's always interesting to pull from the broadest possible pool. If you're looking for the best stories, you don't say, "Oh, I'm only going to publish this little pot," but or you're doing the best of that little pot. But I wanted something a lot
You want the big pot.
brighter. Yes, I want the big pot. I want it all. It's like, I'm afraid I'm going to miss something. If
Ah,
if I restrict what we do, I don't do themes. Um, we do a translation in every issue, and I get asked all the time, why don't you just do a theme issue? Because then all I'm doing is, I want translations to be normal, like not something that people go, ooh, like, no, it should
yeah,
be, it's another story. That's what's important to me, is that it be treated like another story.
yeah,
So so casting a wide net is something that I'm always chasing after, and when I notice statistical dip in the pool, I will get online and start trying to shake the trees. Or I'll email some people in different areas and go, "Do you know any authors that are writing that should be submitting? Here's our link," because we don't solicit any stories. We only take from Slush. So
wow,
I will watch that carefully and try and adjust, because it's sort of like the lottery saying you have to be in it to win it. If I'm seeing the slush pile and seeing that a certain group isn't in it, that's a problem. So it's on me to fix that. It's not a problem with the authors; it's a problem for me to solve. Um, and it's actually turned into something that has brought uh, um, a lot of very interesting voices, and a lot of I've made a lot of friends all over the world, through different authors and stuff like that, and it's been a great experience. And they've introduced me to stuff that has been fascinating. Um, so it's nice to see that sort of taking off. And when we started doing translations, they weren't really happening much here.
yeah,
So it's really a joy seeing other magazines doing more of them. Even if they just do one or two in a year, that's still major progress.
yeah, yeah. Well, as a reader, thank you for that. More good stories to read is always
Yeah.
good. We are just checking. We are out of time,
Uh-huh.
and I just want to thank you so much for taking time out of your busy schedule to join us. And like it says on the screen there, don't forget to like, subscribe, share, click on the little bell on YouTube so you can get told when we got something up. If you go to our YouTube channel, you can see all our other stuff. So, Neil, thank you again. This was
Thank
a
you.
lot of
Always a
fun.
pleasure.
And read his magazine, people. It's great stuff. Thanks.
Thanks.
And this is Mike Zipser. Bye bye.